Hello. So I just wanted to jump on here really quickly to record a video that kind of just gives a really brief synopsis of my all-time favorite tool to use or technique to use when you're having a hard eating disorder recovery day. But before I tell you what it is, I want to just remind everyone that hard days happen. Like they just do. I'm sure everybody's heard it at this point that recovery is not linear and hard days happen. And they can happen years into recovery or decades into recovery. They're not necessarily indicative. Having really strong thoughts or urges or just feelings that you want to turn back to an old behavior or an old kind of toolbox of behaviors, it's mostly indicative, or I like to think of it as indicative of a brain that's just kind of scrambling to help you because our brains really are wired in the most basic sense. They're wired to just protect us and keep us safe. And sometimes when things get hard, or when something's going on, it's really, really human, eating disorder or not. It's so human for a brain to be like, what has worked in the past? Like I see that you're in so much pain. So I would be remiss if I didn't remind everyone that these days happen. But my personal favorite technique that I've used so many times in my life, and I know that a lot of the people that I worked with have used too, is taken from IFS or internal family systems, which is it's just an orientation or a style of therapy that really delves deeply into looking at each human as a series of parts, and all of the parts, whether they're maybe darker or lighter, or younger or older, however you want to conceptualize it, they're all sort of allowed. And it is a different way of viewing eating disorders. Through the IFS lens, an eating disorder is often seen as a part that will be within us always, and it's not necessarily anything um, to demonize. It's just a part that maybe is trying to protect us in some way. So I always like to, when I've had hard days, or when other people that I know have, I think it can be really helpful to kind of talk to that part, like the eating disorder part. And sometimes a lot of people tend to conceptualize it as a younger part, just somebody like a part of you that has always just been there and wants to protect you and scrambles to find these ways that maybe you discovered when you were younger that worked in some sense. Because eating disorder behaviors and an eating disorder can work in the short term to save us from pain. That's a lot of why it is so valid to not want to leave it fully behind. Like that's a really valid experience. So I like to talk to that part, and say, like, I hear you, I get it. I know this used to work for us. This is what we used to do. And I'm not going to do this now. Like I have better ways. I got us from here, kind of like maybe me talking to like my 13-year-old self. Like I totally get it. And when we were 13, this was it. This was so important. But we're not. And I've learned different things and I got us from here. So thank you for trying to protect me from this painful like day or this painful time in my life or this season. But thanks, but no thanks. And I find it really calming. And I think a lot of other people, I think IFS is so popular because there is a really calming, validating piece of like viewing ourselves in such an integrated way and accepting the darker things and the lighter things and the good and the bad, and just accepting it as all a system and all these different parts that really at the end of the day are trying to protect us, even if they're doing it in a way that's kind of harmful down the line. So that is my very quick synopsis of my favorite technique, and I hope it helps somebody.